Okay, chapter 7 in Young Fu. And here we go. The Devils of Disease. With the arrival of summer, life became more difficult. Under a pitiless sky, Chungking simmered. Fu Baba was again without work, and she fretted over the expenditure of every separate cash. That means every bit of money. At the shop, the journeymen bent over hissing anvils, and Young Fu and Small Li sweltered in an effort to keep the fire at proper temperature. Errands offered no relief. The sun was as devouring as the flame that rose from the charcoal oven. Everyone was irritable. Men snarled at one another over trivial affairs, and in cooler weather would have caused no comment whatsoever. In the city, there was talk of plague. The foreigners, it was said, would eat no meat at this season. Young Fu smiled to himself over such foolishness, as though animals had anything to do with cholera. It was sillier than Fu Baba's belief that the dragon controlled such affairs. Given the opportunity to eat good pork, he would prove how unimportant these ideas were. As for dragons, he had less and less fear of them. And then one morning, Zen, the journeyman, failed to appear. At noon, Tang, with a grave face, announced the workman's death. He had, it was claimed, eaten heartily at a feast given by a neighbor. The neighbor raised pigs, and when they became unexpectedly ill, he had killed them and preserved the meat. Most of it had been sold, but choice bits he had held for himself and intimate friends, among them who had been Zen. Silence fell over the group. Zen had been popular. More than one would miss him. Young Fu voiced the question, "Is it true that one can get cholera from eating bad meat?" Murmurs of dissent arose, and Tang spoke. "I am no doctor. I do not know. But that Zen ate sick hog, and that he is no longer present, there is no doubt. This doctrine has come to the Middle Kingdom with the foreigners, and while they seem stupid in many ways, they have peculiar gifts in the healing of the body. In Peking, it is said, there is a large school in which our people study foreign methods of caring for the sick. But little faith have I in any doctor. It matters not which is his native land." The tragedy of Zen's death was forgotten in the scourge that settled its pall on Chungking. Cholera was followed by typhus, and Fu Baba made daily offerings at Kuan Yin's little shrine. Babies were expected to die in the period of great heat, but this year every age contributed its share. Mothers and fathers, children and grandparents slipped out of life with the passing of a day. The homes of the poor became less congested. The halls of the rich were filled with hired mourners. Funeral processions crowded the streets. There were few doorways from which wailing did not ensue. The foreigners, all but those in charge of the hospitals, had long since fled to the hills. Young Fu sent on an errand to Su Chi Men, the gate through which one passed to take a boat for the opposite shore, gazed longingly toward the slopes of green, and wished for the weather he had seen there at New Year's. At the spring festival, Fu Baba had crossed the river, and one of the cousin's children had met her at the water's edge and escorted her to the farm. She had returned from the excursion happier than at any time in Chungking. She had talked of nothing for days but the sweetness of the hill air and the song a rice bird sang. Sometimes she would go there again for a longer visit. Her son, retracing his steps to the coppersmith's, breathed in the strangling stench of drying hides that passed on loads bound for the tanneries, and remembered his mother's desire. That night he mentioned it. "This, I think, would be a propitious time for you to go," he concluded. "And leave you to the devils of disease?" Young Fu smiled. "Wise men do not believe thus." "And wise men die just as do fools." "Hush!" she admonished severely when he would have spoken again. "Are you mad that you offend the spirits with such talk?" Her son said nothing further, and Fu Baba stayed where she was. It was much too hot to study in Wing Scholar's room. Instead, the old gentleman spent most of his leisure on the door-sill. One evening he did not appear. "Go to the honorable teacher's door and ask if he is well," Fu Baba suggested. "His face for days has worn the shadow of illness. This weather is as hard on the very old as it is on babes." Young Fu dragged himself wearily up the ladder. Wing Scholar lay on his wooden pallet. His eyes opened slowly as the boy squatted beside him and asked, "Are you ill, sir?" "I have no pain, but I am very tired. I would sleep." His eyes closed again. Fu Baba heard the report, and she pursed her lips. "Let me think a little. My grandmother used a certain brewing of herbs for such weakness." She moved to the chimney and took a coin from the hidden store. "Go to the large drug shop and buy these. Listen carefully while I repeat the names and quantities." At the pharmacy, Young Fu watched with interest as the wizened old merchant prepared the order. The shop was filled with interesting things. Jars of liquids in which lizards and snakes were preserved in lifelike attitudes demanded attention. From the ceiling, strings of dried beetles and spiders swayed with each current of air. On the shelves were many boxes. Some of the names of the youth could read: ground tiger tooth, newt's eyes, snail shell. But most fascinating of all was a huge red centipede, alive and active in a tiny bamboo cage. Young Fu shivered as the horrid yellow head reared itself in the constant effort to escape. Fu Ba rose as he turned the corner of the street. She held out a hand for the package. When the brew had cooled a little, young Fu carried it upstairs and, assuming the role of authority, forced every drop between Wang Scholar's unwilling lips. Then, catching up a fan, he sat down on the floor beside the old teacher and prepared to spend the night. At midnight, Wang Scholar roused. "Why art thou here?" he asked. "Because you needed me. How are you now?" "Better than for days. Thou art good beyond their years." "It is nothing. Now sleep again. I will rest here beside you, honorable teacher." The sky was light when a continued rapping on the door awoke him. From without, Fu Ba's voice warned her son, "Hurry!" Wang Scholar clicked his teeth in dismay. "Thy master will scold thee, and the fault is mine." Young Fu smiled. "Do not worry," he comforted with an assurance he was far from feeling. "I will see you again tonight. Until then, you must rest." Fu Ba pushed a bowl through a crack at the door. "Ask the respected scholar if he will condescend to eat this food. It will give him back the strength he needs." Wang Scholar called his thanks, and mother and son hastened downstairs. Young Fu waited for nothing further. Like a shot, he was off to the coppersmith's. At his approach, Tang looked up sourly. "Are you a priest that you have so much leisure?" The apprentice bowed. "I am sorry. Last night the teacher who dwells above us was ill. I stayed with him, and this morning I awoke a little late." A spark of interest crept into Tang's eye. "A teacher? Who are you to have a teacher for your intimate?" he asked bluntly. "My first night in this city, he spoke kindly to me. Later, he invited me to do books with him." His voice trailed away, leaving the sentence unfinished. This was the first time he had mentioned studying to anyone at the shop. "You mean that you've been studying characters with a scholar?" "Each evening a little." The master caught up a sheet of newspaper. "Read this." Young Fu selected a small item of local news and read haltingly through it. Twice he stumbled on words he did not recognize, and Tang, looking over the boy's shoulder, prompted him. Small Den, who had entered the room hastily, stood still, his mouth gaping. When Young Fu had finished, the coppersmith spoke to the other boy. "What do you wish?" "When the mandarin waits in the store. Tell him I come at once." Den disappeared, and Young Fu, conscious that his hands were still trembling as a result of the testing, lifted his gaze to Tang's. "Who is this teacher, and where do you find money to pay him?" "His honorable name is Wang, and he asks no payment." "No payment? Truly, you are a favorite of heaven, for he has taught you well. I will talk with you again about this matter." Tang was pleased, the youth told himself as he watched the master make his way to the store. Instead of a scolding for tardiness, he had been commended for his ability in reading. He was beginning to believe that what Tang had just remarked was true. He must indeed be a favorite of the gods. At the noon meal, Small Den brought the affair to the attention of the others. "How is our learned student at this hour?" he asked, bowing before Young Fu. The journeyman looked up questioningly, and Small Den responded to this sign of interest with an elaborate dramatization of what he had witnessed. One or two of the men laughed, but old Zhu interrupted the speaker. "Would that you had sense enough to do something besides chatter. The fool always expends effort to make his superior seem less than himself." Young Fu plunged his chopsticks into a bowl of white vegetable, cabbage, and calmly transferred a succulent portion to his own mound of rice. What Wang Scholar had tried to teach him was true. When in trouble, silence is the best refuge. He had not opened his lips, and the situation was entirely to his satisfaction. Small Lee, sitting next to him, leaned over to whisper, "That is why you ceased watching the public letter writer near the foreign temple, is it not so?" His companion nodded. "But you did not tell me the reason." "I wished to do so. Lee's face became downcast. "I understand. I would have forgotten and told the others, and you did not wish them to know." Young Fu caught up a tender morsel and pushed it into Small Lee's mouth. "Lay down your heart," he comforted. "This is but a little fault, and Wang Scholar says even the greatest men have their weaknesses." The next day, it was a consolation to recall the warm bond that held him and Lee together as he watched the other boy in the act of stoking the fire, stagger, and then fall down beside the oven. Young Fu yelled for help and rushed to the prostrate, which is like laying down, figure. Above the sound of pounding anvils, Lu caught the cries of distress and ran to assist. Together they lifted the limp body and carried it to the coolest spot in the place, a corner of the store. For a brief time, all work ceased. Lu sent Den to a nearby shop for hot tea and forced some of the stimulant through the gray lips. Young Fu, certain that his friend was dead, fanned frantically. If only Tang were present. As if in answer to the thought, the master appeared in the doorway. He glanced at the stricken apprentice, then called for a basin of cool water and a soft cloth. With these, he bathed Lee's head and wrists. After what seemed an interminable period to those watching, Small Lee's eyelids quivered and his muscles began to jerk. With the first sign of recognition, Lu ordered, "Drink." Lee obeyed, and Lu coaxed until the bowl was empty. "Heat in the stomach is what he needs," he explained as he refilled the dish. Small Lee opened his eyes, then closed them. 2 scalding tears crept down his cheeks. "I want my mother," he quavered. Tang smiled understandingly. "When you are stronger, a sedan chair shall carry you to her," he promised. "May I go with him?" Young Fu asked. "Why you and not some other?" "We are friends." His voice broke nervously. "I thought he was dead." Do not fear. Youth does not ascend the dragon so easily, though the weather is sufficient to kill anyone. The men returned to their work, and later Tang saw the two boys safely on the way to Lee's home. The chair bearers halted before the house on Chicken Street, and a woman emerged. When she saw Lee, she screamed, "What is the matter?" Small Lee attempted to answer, but his companion took the situation gravely in hand. "Your son became ill from too much leaning over the fire. He is better now. He wished to see you, his mother, and the coppersmith called a chair and sent him. He asked me to tell you that if tomorrow your son is not recovered, you may keep him with you for another day. Also, he says too much food is not good for this trouble. Use soup or hot tea only and let him sleep." Lee's mother, helping to carry the sick boy into the house, snapped her eyes angrily. 8 children have I borne. Does your coppersmith think I know nothing that he tells me how to care for this one? As for you, who have only been lately weaned from infancy, has your mother never taught you not to give advice to your elders? Young Fu held his tongue. What a temper she had. It was worse than Fu Baba's. Small Lee raised a hand to protest. "Please, godmother, please do not scold Fu. He is my best friend." He turned wearily to the wall at the side of his bed, and the other apprentice gave a last grip to the fevered hand and slipped into the street. That Lee had not sufficient strength to return on the morrow was evident, for the following day failed also to mark his appearance. Young Fu, paying calls at the house on Chicken Street each night after work, brought the news to Tang Li. With his right leg drawn up in agonizing pain, lay almost motionless, but his moans resembled those of one possessed with evil spirits. His mother, recognizing the friendship between the two boys, now confided her worry to the other apprentice. "The gods are offended. I have been careless about paying them any attention, and in revenge they will take my firstborn from me. It is possible that if we call in the priests he may yet be saved, but my husband will not agree. He thinks the priests have little power. They demand much money for coming and do nothing to earn it. But they have strange ways, which we do not understand, of exorcising evil spirits, and if they can cure my son, I will help to earn the money to pay them." Tang listened to this report and drew his brows together in a frown. At midday rice, he discussed the matter with the workmen. That he himself was in a quandary, he confessed. Lu interrupted with an instance of a friend who, supposed to be dying, had under the ministrations of priests recovered. Old Su curled his lip grimly. "Yes, and my brother-in-law, to whom priests plunged red-hot needles, died." Tang nodded. "More die than live. It is easy to leave this world after enduring their tortures. Lee is a good youth. I wish that he might escape their clutches. But if the mother believes in them, I see no way out. The woman always rule in such matters." "Why not a doctor?" suggested the accountant. "There is little difference in their methods." When my eldest grandson, old Su broke in, became sore of eye, his grandmother wished to place them on a poultice of herbs. In this way she had helped many with the same affliction, but the boy's mother, the most stupid woman under my roof, declared herbs were old-fashioned and demanded a doctor. At last, in order to quiet her tongue, my son, her husband, asked permission to grant her request. Fool that I was, I gave it. The doctor came. Since that day my grandson moves like an old man. His eyes are darkened forever. A long sigh issued from the speaker. Later in the afternoon, young Fu walked up to the coppersmith. "The other day," he began hesitantly, "you said that foreigners were reported to have a gift for healing. Do you think they might know how to help Lee's trouble?" "You are not too stupid. I myself had thought of them, but I still am not sure. Moreover, there is the problem of Lee's parents. His mother is not likely to trust him to foreigners. On the other side, his father does not believe in the priests, nor does he wish to spend money on them. It might be my friend, the woman at the foreign hospital, could tell us." Tang smiled. "My friend, the woman at the foreign hospital," he mocked. "My friend, the teacher. And are there still others of whom I do not know?" Small Lee, the boy's eyes lit daringly. He bowed low. "And unless I make a mistake, you, honorable coppersmith." Saying who his friends are, right? He has 4 friends. "Ah, yeah, but you give me credit for poor judgment." Tang reached for a pipe and struggled to hide his amusement. "Enough of this nonsense for the present. Run to the foreign hospital and learn what they can do to help us." He pulled at his pipe until the boy was out of sight and then chuckled to himself. This one was something new in the way of an apprentice, and there was truth in what he had just said. Some quality in the youth appealed to him. His own son had died with the mother from smallpox years before, and there were moments when Tang fancied a likeness between young Fu and what his son might have become. This youth had ambition and few fears, and something more. His friends, Wang Scholar, the foreign woman himself, were proof enough of this fact. As to the sort of man he would be, time alone could prophesy. An hour passed before young Fu appeared. The foreign woman was busy. I had to wait. When she came, I told her about Lee. She thinks it may be a very bad disease which lasts for more than a moon. Should it be that, then Lee will surely die, she says. That is, if we leave him to the priest and his mother. Even in the foreign hospital, and the foreigners think they know more about this illness than do we of the Middle Kingdom. People die of it. It comes from drinking water that has not been boiled. He scratched his head. Aye, but they have queer doctrines. Zen dies of eating, and Lee is ill from drinking. Did you learn nothing more than that the foreigners have ways different from ours? Such information will be of no benefit to Lee. No, but this is the beginning. I told her Lee was my close friend and begged her to go look at him. At first she refused. His family had not invited her to do so, and such a visit would be not according to custom. But after a little talk, she consented. Tonight with the foreign doctor, she goes to Lee's home. If it should be the disease she mentioned, she will, with the consent of Lee's parents, find a place for him in the foreign hospital, which since the fire has been used as a hospital. There they will do all that they know toward his recovery. Not so fast, not so fast. Who can say whether Lee's parents will agree? Interrupted Tang. That I do not know. However, it is true that a little word from the master in charge of an apprentice. He let the sentence complete itself in thought. Fountain of wisdom that you are, so I am to bear the responsibility. And suppose the foreigners kill him. For the rest of my life I suffer the demands of his family on my time and fortune. But if the foreigners can cure him and left at home, he dies? What do the foreigners ask for this service? When I spoke of that, the foreign woman smiled. She said the price would be suited to what Lee's father could afford to pay, a small amount since he was, as I told her, a poor man with many mouths to feed. And they consider small Lee in spite of this? They must wish to fill empty beds. Their beds are filled, and in the house to overflowing. If Lee goes to them, she does not yet know where they will place him. Tang grunted. Carry that jar to Wen Mandarin's residence and hurried. Den, who is tough, can take his turn at the fire. That night, young Fu raced home through the heat. Then he paused long enough to tell Fu Baba that he would be later than usual and turned toward Chicken Street. He wished to prepare Small Lee's mother for the unexpected visit of the foreigners, for Li Baba was quite capable of chasing them from her threshold. She might, like many of the women, consider their coming a calamity and use any means to avoid contact with them. When he arrived, Lee's parents were quarreling violently. Children crowded the room. Young Fu kicked a mangy dog through the doorway and turned to the bed. At his friend's touch, the sick boy's hot hands reached for him, and the parched lips muttered in pain. Lee's fevered brain was restive under the turmoil of the room, and young Fu, a lump welling in his throat, longed desperately to do something. The parents paid no attention to the newcomer. The mother was screeching her determination to call in the priest, and the father stood sullenly shaking his head in refusal. There was a rap at the doorway, and the younger children rushed to see. Young Fu looked up expectantly for the foreign woman to appear. He was amazed to see the tall figure of Tang. In an instant the clamor lessened. A courteous exchange of greetings followed. The children were ordered to play without, and the older people settled in conversation. Only Small Lee's whimperings never ceased. After a while, Tang rose and came to the bedside. He threw young Fu a glance of understanding, then centered his interest on Lee. While he stood there, one of the children ran into the room. 2 foreign devils wait without, she announced in a sacred voice. What do they wish? Young Fu jumped up. One of them is my friend. She knows a great deal about sickness. I asked her to come look at your son. What's that your business? Demanded Lee's mother. Never shall they see him. Her husband stepped forward. I have as much faith in them as the priests, and as you well know, they cured the daughter of my youngest uncle. He moved to the door. At least it will do no harm for them to come in. Perhaps they know what this sickness is. Li Baba started to wail. As the women entered, young Fu went to greet them. Tang bowed and stepped back into the shadow of the room. The foreigners addressed themselves to the father. May we examine the boy? Will you hurt him? The foreign doctor shook her head gravely. No. Then do so. Nothing can be worse than the affairs of present. Young Fu watched with interest. The doctor studied her patient. This is not typhoid, but something quite different. Usually it is not difficult to heal, but in your son the disease has gone far. I cannot promise recovery. However, if you wish us to try, we shall carry him immediately to the foreign hospital, and I shall attend to him at once. Why not here in his home? Lee's father wished to know. I have not the proper instruments and medicines to use. My only hope for him is to get him to the foreign hospital as soon as I can. The decision rests with you. Young Fu hung breathless on the reply. Li Baba cried afresh. They will kill my firstborn. They will kill him. The father was making up his mind with difficulty. And the cost? Whatever you can afford to pay. That is fair, and if he stays here, he is likely to die, and if the priests come, most surely, he may go with you. Li Baba darted forward. Then I go with him. The foreign doctor smiled in understanding. Of course, and his father may come too to keep you company while we are operating. Tang came from the shadows and spoke to the father. If the boy needs anything for which you cannot pay, let me know. He beckoned to young Fu, and they went into the street together. The next morning, a younger brother bore word to the shop that Small Lee was still alive. 4 days later, young Fu was permitted to see the patient for a few minutes. The sick boy smiled weakly. Heat had left his body, and he was no longer in pain. It would be almost a moon, however, before he could leave the hospital. His attack of appendicitis had been a severe one. Young Fu walked through the gateway, thinking happily of the good fortune which had come from knowing the foreign woman. Her $5 had added to his mother's slim resources. His small gift of a brass kettle had brought her to trade to Tang, and now his friend's life had been saved. He wondered at his own luck. Evil spirits and foreigners were 2 things his mother's generation considered it wise to fear. He had, according to them, been dangerously unwise, and the result in each instance had been increased prosperity and happiness. A funeral procession with elaborately robed priests beating gongs and chanting weird rhythms met him. He stepped to the curb and watched with interest the coolies dressed in white mourning cloth who carried aloft paper imitations of articles the dead might wish to use in the spirit world. Young Fu shivered. Sadness tinged his thoughts as he remembered that the genial Zen would not work again at an anvil. But Wang Scholar and Small Lee were both recovering rapidly, and in a few days the period of great heat would fade and White Dew's coolness would give men new vigor. No hardship lasted forever. Okay, so we had some words in there. We had smallpox, which is a disease that usually has like pustules and scar formation. Succulent means full of juice. Quandary is in a state of perplexity or doubt. And then I have, why does Fu think it is odd that people would die from the food and from the water? And the answer to that would be that both are necessary for life, right? Sorry, I've got your bed on. You're just looking at my unmade bed. But both of them are needed for life. And so if you're going to die from them, right, it's a little odd that the two things that you need to live will also kill you. So that is the end of chapter 7. No questions or anything for that.